I know, right? I'm excited, but I'm kind of sad. Came up on me quick, and I was like, oh, dang it. All right, so I made note cards, but I made a goal for myself at the beginning of the term for my last presentation to not use my note cards. So I'm going to not use my note cards. Okay. All right, hi, everybody. As you know, my name is Tiana Keith, and tonight, before diving into our presentation or my presentation, I want to introduce you to a few IO psychologists who are working in fields that aren't traditional to IO psychology. So first, this is Maya Shankar. So Maya Shankar works for, or she worked for the White House under the Obama administration. She is an IO psychologist that used her knowledge of human behavior to directly influence policies and procedures that were coming out of the White House and kind of telling people how she thought that people would react to these procedures. This is Jack Stark. So Jack works for NASCAR. He uses his knowledge of performance psychology to evaluate and increase the effectiveness of pit crew teams. And this is my personal favorite. This is Dr. Catherine Keaton. I actually had the opportunity to interview her, which was wonderful. I highly recommend you guys do so. Just reach out on LinkedIn. It's amazing. And so she was working with NASA to determine which astronauts were going to be going to Mars for the 2030 mission. So I wanted to talk about this tonight because I wanted us to kind of start thinking about our own careers in IO and kind of start thinking about how we can branch out and we can do things that aren't necessarily traditional. So tonight, we're going to be talking about the future of IO psychology. And it's going to be a little different because I'm not going to talk about where I think the field is going to be in 10 years. I'm not going to talk about what I think is going to be necessary even 5 years from now, because the future of IO is in this very room. We are the future of IO. And so it's up to us to develop these skills and these abilities that are going to ensure our future as IO psychologists. So tonight, we're going to be talking about resumes, we're going to be talking about CVs and how we can build those. And then we're going to talk a little bit about LinkedIn and networking. So before really diving into it, what's the difference between a CV and a resume? So a resume is typically a shorter document. It usually reflects your most recent work experience, and it focuses on the impact that you had on an organization and your experiences that you had. And you can use a resume for most any kind of job. Now, a CV, on the other hand, focuses on your academic career. And so this is publications, this is research, this is your professional affiliations, honors, awards, all of that. And so a CV is much longer, and it reflects the entirety of your academic career. Now, this kind of document is typically used for scientific and academic jobs. So, how do we build a CV or a resume? So our goal is to build a master document. So a master document is going to have everything on it. It's going to have your experiences, it's going to have your jobs, your tasks, your responsibilities, everything of importance that you've ever done at any job. And the point of this is when you're out there and you're applying for jobs, you can pull pieces from that document and create a custom resume specific for the job that you're applying for. So step one is to list out those jobs, list out your tasks, list out your responsibilities. And then once you've done that, you're going to go on to the ONET. Now, I don't know how many are familiar with the ONET, but it is an amazing resource for jobs. It tells you about knowledge, skills, abilities, salary, education level, work activities, all of those things for thousands of jobs. And they're even ranked by people that work in those jobs as to how important they are and how often you do them. So what you're going to do is you're going to go onto the ONET and you are going to type in here in the search bar. So I typed in food source manager because that's what I did. And so once you do that, then you just hit the search button. And then up here is going to be a list of jobs. So click on which matches closely to the job that you typed in. And then we're going to go into details. So the details is where you're really going to get that nitty-gritty information that you need. It's going to give you those specific examples that you're looking for, and you're going to tie those to your tasks. So for tonight, the example that we're going to use is this right here, where it says management of personnel resources. So motivating, developing, and directing people as they work, and identifying the best people for the job. So I'm going to tie this to my example here of providing feedback to employees about their performance. So the next step is going to be to combine those things. So we are going to take our experience of providing feedback and also to take the ONET job description of developing and directing people as they work. And then we're going to combine them into a new phrase using the common language from both. So what I came up with was that I directed promotion of employee development by providing constructive feedback about performance. So you can see that I use language from both of these to come up with a new description. Now, you can also do this for any job that you're applying to. So say you're applying to a human resources job. You can, instead of using this job description here, what you're going to do is you're going to paste in the job description from the specific job that you're applying to. Now, there are algorithms out there that scan resumes that look specifically for that common language that's in the job description. So if you don't use the language that they use in their job description for what they're looking for, there's a chance your resume may never even get seen. So it's very important to make sure that you tie in what you've done to what they're looking for. So next, we're going to talk about LinkedIn QR codes and how we can use those. So what you're going to do is you're going to go onto your phone, onto your LinkedIn app, and you're going to go into the search bar. Now, once you tap that, there's going to be a little tiny square that pops up in the upper window right here. So hit that, and that is going to bring up your QR code. So after you get there, you can share it with yourself, or you can download it to your gallery, to your Dropbox, or wherever, and save it as an image. So you can use this QR code on your resume to show employers everything that's on your resume, or you can use it to make super fancy business cards like I've done. And last, I'm going to talk about networking, because networking is so important. You never know who is going to be responsible to give you that next job, to give you that foot in the door. So I have created a template for you. So you can go onto Blackboard, download this presentation, and literally copy and paste this into a LinkedIn message for someone who you're looking to introduce yourself to, or someone that you're looking to connect to. The only thing that you have to do is change your name and their job title. So if you don't want to use the template, I highly encourage you to also create your own. So just make sure that when you do so, you include who you are, you include a time frame, and you talk about why it is that you're interested in talking to this person. So in closing tonight, we talked about resumes and CVs and how we can build those. We also talked a little bit about LinkedIn and networking. And for anyone who's interested in downloading this slide, there's also a couple extra slides for some really good tips and resources for how to build cover letters and things like that, that are on here that I didn't get a chance to talk about tonight. Thank you. Any questions? Is it hot in here? Goodness. Oh, and just to throw it out there, if anyone is unfamiliar with the ONET and you want to learn more, I am relatively familiar with it. So if anyone's interested at the end of the term for that last class, I would be happy to do a presentation kind of guiding you through ONET and how you can filter things out. And they even have a new thing on there where it's called like My Next Move. And so it tells you specific experiences that you may want to look into if you're looking for a certain job, and you can find like job postings, all kinds of stuff on there. So if anybody's interested, I'd be happy to do something like that at the end of the term. Any questions about the presentation tonight? feedback.
Anna, I just wanted to say thank you so much for preparing all of us for the future. And
Yes.
honestly, I never knew the difference between a resume and a CV, and my mind was like, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, I didn't want to go in and kind of assume that anybody knew the difference because I just found out the difference myself like a couple weeks ago. I was like, oh, so good. Yes, I'm glad you learned something.
It's incredibly actionable. Like I want to go look for a job now, which I hate looking for jobs. I would say one suggestion is just slow down and get a cadence.
Oh.
And maybe find a rhythm, and it would be like easier to digest all that information that you just.
Sorry, I was really excited.
Yeah, there's a lot.
No, and the ONET is honestly something that is so complicated. I really struggle with this presentation because there's so much information on there, and I could seriously talk for hours on it. But just to kind of like scratch the surface and just give people like a basis of what it's for. But thank you. No, that's really helpful. I do kind of feel like looking back on it now, yeah, there's a lot of information. I probably could have just stuck to just the ONET stuff and like kept it at that. So thank you.
Well, I want to say it was very informative. The resume thing, I didn't know that you can exceed more than one page, not even half, it's just one page. So that was like new to me. Could have definitely done that a long time ago. But anyways, I really appreciate all the information. I do wish that what you have discussed was shortened so I could hear more. So the other sides you wanted to talk about in the presentation.
Yeah, that would have
Now,
taken.
like, dang it, what was she gonna talk about?
Well, you're just gonna have to go on there and download it.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, we're friends. We talk all the time. I will happily share with you what's on there.
Yeah, but that's something I do wish that, could have been included, but other than that, I mean, I love it. So,
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. I love that you inspired us, like saying we are the future, and then completely set us up for the future, right? You're like, I'm gonna help you find a job. I know that we've been talking to you throughout the semester about our resumes and why we're not getting attracted to, the recruitment teams and stuff. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to teach us this because it is valuable information. And I don't have anything negative to say. I was gonna say that on the slide when you first introduced the ONET, it looked a little confusing, like a lot of information, but then it was like a video and I was like, oh, well, just look at her.
Well, I was gonna put like pieces on there of the pictures and I was like, why don't I just do a screenshot, like a video screenshot of it and like show the process?
Mm-hmm.
But
the only thing is maybe slow down that video part a little bit, because then while you were talking to her, I could see you started to speed up to go with the video.
yeah.
So maybe making sure that matches enough so we can follow along too. But I mean, you always do really well up there, so
Thank you. Yeah, no, kind of thinking about it now, like I think that like the QR stuff is really important and the networking stuff is really important, but I really feel that like I could have seriously just focused on just the resume and CV part and like called it at that.
I
And
actually
then-
love the ONET.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, if you, like I said, if you want, I'd be happy to do another presentation at the end of the term, talking about the ONET and what you can use it for. We're gonna use it for our job analysis next semester. I guarantee you we're going to. Yeah, because it's a really, really valuable resource.
Yeah, I've never heard about that.
Oh, see, that's excellent. What's up, Joseph?
Shout out to Tiana because during undergrad, I actually approached her about my resume and she helped me, and she also introduced me at ONET. So using that really raised my application for jobs. So it was a great networking, and now you're presenting here with all of us.
You might have been a little bit of inspiration for this. I was like, oh, I hope Joseph do that. I'm like passionate about this. I'm gonna do this again.
Yes, but a great job on presentation.
Thank you. Yes, Mike.
So I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel to try and find something that like I could give as feedback
Do
other
it.
than this is awesome. I really enjoyed it. I really liked your intro.
Thank you.
Tell some stories and then ease into the content. I thought that was great. The only thing I can possibly come up with is the template that you chose and the background graphics. To me, they feel a little bit like confetti or like kind of a party kind of theme. So maybe for this group that works really well. I mean, it's kind of high energy and the way that you're presenting to us, people that you know really well, maybe that worked. But if this was like a boardroom presentation
Yeah.
or more of a professional setting, then I wouldn't go with something like that.
This is the first presentation that I did that was like colorful and bubbly, and I was like, should I do it? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. It's my last one. It's fine. But thank you for that. Yeah. Like, and yeah, I agree. Like, I think for this kind of audience, like the colors and the brightness and stuff are okay. But yeah, for a board meeting, no, I would never. No. Maybe like black and white, maybe like blue or red. Like that's it. But thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, but it was awesome.
Thank you. Anybody else? Dr. Fuller?
Yes, I loved it. I think it's amazing. This is a presentation, of course, but I would consider it more like a workshop. Nothing wrong with that. I thought it was a stellar workshop. Really good walkthrough on how to do this process, maybe why, and then how to do it. And I love that. You set it up really well. Some things to assist, not critiques, just assist in when you do any type of service like this, like workshop or a demonstration, a skills training, anything like that. It's really helpful to ease the anxiety of everyone that's trying to keep up with you mentally and take notes and even like take their phones and like take pictures of the screen and stuff, is to, at the beginning, offer a QR code like you did. But say this presentation is online with this QR code. Take a picture of this right now and you will have it, like it's yours. So something that I've seen people do that helps is like that.
Yeah, no, I didn't even know. I never even thought of something like that. That's amazing. Because like, if I was gonna do this, if this was like an hour-long presentation, which I could totally do, I would have made activities. We would have gone through like we would have had games where like we matched like our tasks to things that were on ONET, and like we would have done a whole bunch of stuff. But because it was limited to like that 7-ish minutes, it really, really like cut it down to the bare bones. But I didn't even know about that. Like that's fantastic. I will definitely use something like that for sure.
And you can typically host those types of things. Maybe Mark would know more, but I often do things where I'll either shorten it with like a link shortener so people can type it in, or a QR code, and then you can host it on some cloud storage place like Dropbox or Box.
I have a YouTube channel too, so
YouTube
I can
channel.
make a pre-recording of the thing and post it on there.
Exactly. Anything like that, and you can then alleviate everyone's concern, so they can just focus and be with us. You.
I got it. That's legit.
So yes,
Okay.
that I think would add, assist in the presentation itself. I did put it, because you spoke about it in a workshop fashion, I immediately downloaded it and put it on Blackboard for this week,
Fantastic.
because I think you intentionally meant like for people to actually go and download it.
I did. Yeah, I know there was a lot of text on here tonight, and I apologize about that, but like we're talking about resumes and CVs, there's a lot of text on those.
Yeah. So in that regard, I put it on there. I hope that's okay with you.
Absolutely, of
So
course.
it's on
Yeah,
this
I made it
week's
to share. So.
material. So it's there now, so you can download it, check it out for the additional material, and also to review the things that maybe you didn't catch. So thank you for that. I thought it was a stellar presentation. Very good job. Thank you.
Of course. Do you want me to leave that up here? Okay. You got this.
Yeah, no.
Do it.
I know, but whew, it's gonna be a tough cookie to crack there. Like, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. You guys already know who I am, so there's no reason to introduce myself, but I want to deliver a presentation on the future of IO. And I wanted to start this presentation off with St. Francis. St. Francis wanted to delivering the prayer of serenity, which talked about, which says, Lord, grant me the strength to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I thought this quote was very important because Dr. Iverson wound up letting me know that you need to be aware of the things that you can change in your life, and that's what directed this presentation. St. Francis, the lines of St. Francis that stood out most to me was accept the things I cannot change and encourage to change the things that I can. That is what made me focus my presentation on the article from, I want to say, Pritchett 2020, where he talked about how the U.S. faces serious skill gaps, that there's a change in skills in the United States, that if you are a worker who works in, let's say, a warehouse, a worker who works in fast food, or in industry, that it is a very difficult, it's going to be hard for you to get a job because there's a higher demand for different skills that are inside the job market. The reason why that is because the job market really has an issue of matching what is in demand with the employee. So there's going to be a swapping of skills. And some have suggested that to fix this problem, that you go back to college and get another set of skills. And that might not work for everyone. That might be an issue. You might be a parent, you might have loans, you might have debt, so college might not be in your future. So that brings me to look up more articles. That brings me to look at more articles that confirm what Pritchett was talking about. There's Miller and Bowie that pointed out that if you're a low and middle skilled worker, as I mentioned before, a fry cook, a warehouse worker, a cab driver, it will be hard for you to find a job because those skills are not in demand. We're developing technology that can do the job of a cab driver, technology that can flip a hamburger, technology that can go get a box. So that puts my job in jeopardy. So if there's a robot that can do my job, I would be out of a job. That is what Joris was talking about, Joris 2016. He mentioned in his article that yes, technology is advancing and it does put a precedence on the skills that people have who work in low and medium skilled jobs. So that brings us to what an IO psychologist is. So the future of IO is about how we can make the change happen. As IO psychologists, it is our job and duty to take data and analyze it, review it, and critique it, and make it into something valuable for an organization or company. In the beginning of my presentation, I pointed out what were some of the concerns or issues I had in the reading, and that was that there's going to be a swap on skills. You're going to have more skills that go beyond just working on a computer, talking to people, flipping a hamburger, getting a box, training somebody, like Tiana pointed out with her presentation, that using the ONET, I was listening, I got you, using the ONET, you're going to critique those skills, which was very informational because this will help us in the future so that we can step in positions as future IO psychologists or practitioners in the field so we can develop the tools necessary to help people who work in medium skills or low skilled jobs. So it will be our specialty to collect all the data we can, get all the resources that we can, and make that information valuable to the organization so we can help people. It will come in the form of a job analysis. We would basically, to explain what it is a job analysis is a systematic study that details, records, reports, and gives characteristics of the job. We would take the information that we find about a job, we will record it, we find out what skills are valuable, what are needed to make that skill gap that is in jeopardy in the United States today, because there needs to be more skills. We can find the skills that people have, and we can say, you know what, this person does have the ability to work this job. They may not have the education, they may not have the experience in the field, but they have skills necessary for this job. So we don't have to just disregard them just because they don't have a higher degree or a higher education. A job analysis is for maximizing manpower. As you can see here, I pointed out that it is recruiting, selection, interviewing, training, safety, administration. Training, safety, administration, personal manager records, and job evaluations. So that's what we'll be doing in the future. We're going to have the tools as IO psychologists to drive the future and help those who are in low and medium skilled jobs. That's my presentation. All my references, everyone. So.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So I loved your overview of the readings, and I'm curious of your personal opinion on what you're reading. So you talk about job analysis as tasks shift more to automation and AI. Do you think that, so if we're bringing in more AI and software and machines to do more work. How do you think that's gonna affect IoT in the sense that are IoT gonna be responsible for assessing productivity of these machines? Or is this gonna have a negative impact on work for IoT? If more of the work is shifting to machines, then is more of that gonna be taken on by like computer and software engineers who are managing the machines? Do you have any ideas or thoughts on that, or opinions?
I don't, but Joris 2016 did talk about that. Technology, we're not at a point in technology where it can completely replace a human worker, not in such a high skill level job as an IO psychologist. Our jobs wouldn't really be in jeopardy compared to someone who's a low and medium skill like job such as working in a warehouse, flipping a burger, all that, we wouldn't be in jeopardy. But if there is a transition where we could replicate a robot that can do the job of a IO psychologist, then our job would be in jeopardy, and then we would have to flip our skills and figure out how we're going to make our future past that point in time a little bit better. So I hope that answers your question, or
Great perspective.
anyone else? Yes, Tiana?
So when I was doing the readings, like one of the things that I kind of thought of is if automation is going to take away these, I don't want to say necessarily like lower skilled jobs, but these like repetitive jobs and independent jobs and things like that, how do you think that's going to affect the education of people going into the workforce? So like basically people that, for example, people that work at, like McDonald's or Starbucks, like some of them have degrees, but a lot of them are, out of high school and things like that prior to their college degrees. So do you think that if we move into an environment like that with that increased automation, what kind of effect is that going to have on colleges?
Wow, that's a tough question. Honestly, I would have to do more research on that because I do not want to give you the wrong answer.
No worries. Thank you.
Anyone else? Chad? Mark? I saw Chad, but he's not
What
gonna
were
say
you
it.
calling on him?
The guy said, gave me a thumbs up, so I was like, all right, that's.
All right. No, I really enjoyed your delivery, and I just wanted to comment on that. So to me, you seemed like you were either well prepared or just faked it really well. I don't know which, but it doesn't matter.
It was because I was just blown away by Tiana's presentation. I was like, ooh, yeah, I should have taken Brittany's advice and went first, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, especially given how you started out, you were talking about, having some tough conversations and tough, just kind of reevaluating some things and even to launch into that and to be so calm. And like I said, just your whole delivery, I thought was really impressive, especially given that. So
Thank you, man. Thank you. Yes,
I like
Chad.
how you tied it into like people who work with their hands and work lower skill jobs, because I came from that, like construction and these jobs that would be replaced. I think it was good, your presentation was very thought provoking, like I'm thinking about like transhumanists from like the 1950s who were making these arguments like 60 years ago. And I just feel like if I'm thinking about that stuff, you did a good job of like getting, inspiring that thought, so I like to commend you on that.
Thank you, Chad. Yes.
I really enjoyed the content, and I also like that you speak very clearly and I can understand what you're saying. I do have some feedback. I did notice halfway through your presentation, you did start reading off the screen a little bit, and we always critique people about having too much information on the screen. I felt like it was kind of in the middle, like you could have done away with some stuff and talked a little bit more about what you were explaining. And then you do this thing with your leg and you like fidget a little bit.
I'm sorry. Details, I'm sorry. But,
So,
go
yeah,
ahead.
just make your movements a little bit more.
Okay, I did there's more I wanted to touch on because I believe it was the Joris article where he was talking about how technology would affect us and how we're moving on to. He talked on something that was, I want to say, what is the word? I'm just going to give a arbitrary term. It was skill mining, and I really wanted to take it in on that, like my presentation on that, because there was tons of articles I was finding out how organizations go out to look for people with certain skills, how they go to different countries and look for certain skills, and it would tie in perfect with my presentation. But then I was like, that's gonna be like 15 slides. I got 5 minutes. I gotta figure out how I'm gonna work it, like put it together. So I kind of wanted to just focus on how we could take our skills to IO and apply it towards the future, how we can help people who have low and medium skill jobs, and we can still find, instead of excluding them, say, you know, you just don't have the credentials or the education for it. It doesn't work like that in this world. Like, no, we can help them find jobs. We can make sure that they can go home with a paycheck. Yes, Joseph?
Yeah, so, comparing your presentation from your past, presentations, I think, your past presentations, the energy that you had, was more heightened compared to your presentation today. The only thing that, I would recommend is that, you know, once a person or presenter steps up to the stage, they set the mood, and the tone for the whole room. And I think that because of the pacing of maybe you're pacing the walls too much, walking back and forth, that kind of took away a lot of energy and it feels like it's kind of monotone and also feels like you're not engaging with the audience. But the knowledge and your expertise with the topic was there, but the delivery is just not where it's not matching. So keeping in mind for future presentations, the first step you take in that stage will set the mood for the whole presentation. So
Thank you. I do appreciate that. I will take that advice and apply it the next time, okay? Thank you. You're okay. Any feedback, Professor?
Of course. I appreciate that you went up there with confidence. You went up there kind of laughing and joking about like, okay, you got to follow Tiana. That's a tall order, right?
Yeah.
It's a difficult thing to do, especially after a killer presentation. So I think you introduced it well, right? In the terms of kind of a jovial, very positive, like, okay, we got this, which is good. I appreciate that and I want to commend you for that. Something I would try and work towards is spending a little bit more time, kind of what you're doing now, looking at the audience, engaging with the audience. Sometimes you were talking to the wall and like slapping, like hitting your fist, you're talking to the wall. Who's he talking to? Where is he going? And then I do this too, but I try not to when I'm presenting to like cross my arms when I'm talking, like when I'm presenting, because it's just a little bit closed, right? Like I want to be as accessible as I physically can be. And so I want to be in the room. I want to make eye contact. I want to use my physical presence as much as I can to draw attention to either the words that I'm saying or the ideas I'm trying to share or the thoughts that are maybe on the screen or a quote or something to get people as engaged as I possibly can. Now, we all have room to grow in all sorts of different domains. Those are just a few things, just logistically, right? Just physically make sure that you're not, when you're walking towards the wall, moving to the side of the room, which is fine, it's better to look at somebody in this region, like where you're walking, instead of like looking at the wall and talking to the wall. So it's just strange. It's just like
I'm
watching
sorry, like to give you some insight. I had a very long night last night. I was up to like about 7 in the morning.
it.
So,
No.
yeah, I'm sorry about that a little bit.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to give you some feedback so that you can incorporate when you're speaking, to a group of people. You want to talk to them. You want to be with them. And I really liked Tiana's strategy in that it was like a workshop to deliver support. Like, hey, this is a information that I'd like to offer to you, right? An expertise that I have, an experience that I have that I'm looking to give to you. I know it's silly. I've said this before, but I truly do believe it. There's no nervous in service. If you're just giving something and you're eager to change the perspective of like, hey, everyone's watching me, I'm up here to perform, to I have something to give to you, and I really want you to have it. I want you to get this thing because I care about you and I think this will benefit you in some meaningful way. That really changes how you deliver instead of like, okay, here we got to just get through this, right? Like I got to do this thing for points, it's part of this class. That's not right. That's not kind of where we're trying to like orient ourselves mentally. It's not just you. This is for everybody and myself, like to try and understand like, we want to give something. And that really changes the demeanor of the presenter.
I noticed that when I was doing the presentation that my tone I could hear it, and as like halfway through I was like, all right, I got cheered up.
Yeah.
And towards the end I got cheered up, so I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, because I think you can do it. I think you're an energetic, engaging person, and I want that, right? I want what you can do. So very good. I look forward to another presentation. All right, good. How many people get cheered after they present? That's great.
I only want to bring pop
I like the idea. Oh, you just like double down on it.
I know. Oh yeah. I don't know how.
Awesome. Way to navigate that, Amy. That is no easy task. Well done.
That's my shot lock. Yeah.
Well, hello everyone. Good evening. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So my name is Amy Tran, and it's a pleasure to be in front of all of you. This is my last presentation for this class. Yay. So what I'm going to be talking to you today is the automation of work and the future of work because of automation. So as we all know, technology is advancing. We can't stop it. It's only going to keep going from here. And currently about 5% of jobs can be fully automated, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will be automated. It really depends on the cost for the business, the benefits that the business will receive from it, if there's an actual need, and how difficult it is to integrate it. But for most of us, we're actually going to be having parts of our jobs that can fully be automated. Not all of it, but just parts of it. And with that, I want to say that automation can actually be a partner to your work. So I used to work for a nonprofit called Human Options, fairly small, and a lot of my work was very repetitive. I would have to process the donor information and send out the donor, they're called the donor letters, which have all the tax information, so you can do that at the end of the year. And I had a lot of other projects as well that I had to work on. So these actually took a lot of my time, and instead of focusing on the bigger projects that I wanted to, I actually spent hours and hours and hours doing all this data processing, sending out these receipts. And while I was there, I discovered that one of the platforms we're paying for actually handles most of that and would actually free up a lot of my time. So when I discovered this, I spoke to my supervisor and let her know that, hey, we can actually implement these things to automate these certain aspects. And we discussed it, we figured out how that would look like, and we implemented it. And for me, I actually had more productivity because I automated these certain parts of my job. But that's my story. It's not necessarily the case for everyone. And with that, I wanted to also touch on how technology is advancing so much that we don't truly know its full impact, but we can stay aware of what it looks like and what that impact could be. So surprisingly, voice actors, text-to-speech is advancing so much that it's actually going to be changing the way that voice actors work. So just to give a little bit of feedback, a background, currently, just FYI, the Bureau of Labor Statistics didn't separate between voice actors and actors, since they kind of go between both things. So voice actors can go into acting on film, but they primarily do commercials. They bring to life our favorite characters. And with that, currently, as of last year, there was about 50,000 people employed in this role. And they expect in the next few years that this area is going to grow by 32% in employment. However, there's only less than 10,000 jobs every year on average. So how can text-to-speech impact this, make it more complicated and more competitive? Well, I have a short clip that I'm going to play. I think text-to-speech. This is the example I have. I hope I can, because I need to select a certain section. So, as we all know, text-to-speech.
Option 1. James was from Scotland.
So that's an example of what I typically think of with text-to-speech. Monotone. There's no way that actors can be impacted by this. But I want everyone to close your eyes just for a few moments. I'm going to play another clip, and I want to see how you can hear automated text-to-speech as it is today.
Hey Weston, you know about artificial intelligence?
Is that what I am? A robot?
Yeah.
I don't believe you. If I'm a robot, how come I can feel real emotions?
What do you mean?
I can be scared to my bones
Yes,
or get super angry.
that's amazing. I didn't know you could do that.
So, very short clip, but the surprising thing is that both of these voices are actually AI generated, which is pretty crazy. And with that, it's not gonna switch. I think I have to use the mouse now.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So for those of you that play video games, back in 2019, Obsidian came out with an awesome game called Outer Worlds. So in that, Outer Worlds was the first game developed that heavily relied on this artificial intelligence of text-to-speech. And they partnered with a company called Sonantic. And Sonantic is the one that's actually making a lot of these changes and innovations. And they're creating a business model around text-to-speech that uses these complex AI voices. So the way that it works, just a little bit of background, it's kind of like a Photoshop for voices. So developers, as they're developing this game, they'll just type the text, the script, and they can select which actor's voice they want and select if it's going to be angry, yelling. So there's incredible advancement on that. But what does it mean for the voice actors? Especially if they just need their voice once and then it's done. So with that, is automation good or bad? It really depends. However, as IOs and as people out in the world, as consumers, we can speak with our wallet to make sure that automation is implemented the right way. We can be aware of biases. We can speak up and use our voice. That's what I have for you guys today.
Yeah, I think you did so good, and I thought that was such an interesting take and like something so different, and I thought it was really interesting. And similarly, I guess going along with like the voice acting, your own voice is beautiful and amazing. You can speak up a little bit, like we could hear you, but like you could speak louder. I think it would like you would command us more, like you speaking with no one stop. You got it. You're confident. You have very good content. Just speak a little bit louder.
Thank you. I'm working on it.
Gwen, great job implementing that little activity like in the middle of your presentation. It just blended so well, and it was very entertaining. So with that being said, just to have your presentation a little bit more engaging, I would have loved if you like stepped a little closer so that people in the back can really engage with you. But other than that, like it was so entertaining. It was fun.
Yeah, fun. Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, so when you were talking about like the voice AI stuff, the voice acting, I just happened to a couple weeks ago stumble on like a YouTube ad where they were like, oh, you know, you can write out a script and this AI will read it for you. And it was reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, it sounds like real people.
It's pretty
So,
scary.
yeah, it's insane. So when you were like, oh, this is what we think of when we think of you know, like text to speech or whatever. And I was like, oh, is she gonna bring in like the real current example? And you did, and I was like, yes, you nailed it. That's amazing. I love it. My only suggestion would be similar to what Miani said, like it was a little bit hard to hear you here in the back. So yeah, just like a tiny bit more left, just like a tiny bit. But I love to try in Outer Worlds. It's like one of my favorite games. So like, yes, excellent, good job.
I have
Good
to
job.
admit, I still haven't finished it.
Oh, you have to. The expansion is so amazing. It's a lot of fun.
Good thinking. Oh, and
Good job being more confident. I think you did amazing today. You can really see a growth. I think a lot has to do with the fact that you did it last week and then you did it again this week and you're like, yes, okay, I'm still fresh. So I see the confidence building and I'm just so proud of you. So good job.
thank you. And I have to admit, I did make my husband sit there for at least an hour.
Yes! That was
Did
great.
it.
That's what I'm talking about. So good.
Anyone else?
Okay, my feedback. I loved it. It was really fun, very engaging. It was humorous. It was informative. Though the one thing that I would say that might polish it a little bit would be to find a way to incorporate the video so that you don't have to navigate the video, so that it's a piece of your presentation or cued, pre-cued to that part. I'm not entirely aware of how to accomplish that. I know that you could download it and actually cut it, right, and edit it. But in terms of like how to do that through like still hosting it on YouTube and like, you know, embedding it in your PowerPoint, I don't know exactly personally how to do it, but I think it's accomplishable. I think it may be feasible. And that would just add a little bit of polish to the presentation itself instead of having to navigate and trying to guess like where it's at. That's stressful, I can imagine as well. Like, is this gonna work? And am I gonna find the right places? And so instead of that anxiety provoking moment, like little clips that you could play for us, because it was just audio. So I would assume that it's a little bit easier even than video would be. So to actually like just download the audio, cut it up, have parts in it where you just hit play in the PowerPoint itself, because you don't need that whole video or that whole YouTube clip.
Yeah.
So it would just be one thing to add to it, but I really enjoyed the presentation. I thought it was great. I thought you did a really nice job. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's the iPad.
Did you play with your husband? Like the other games or anything?
It depends. He likes multiplayer and I like RPG simulations.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But if he dies too much, or if I die too much in an individual game, then we can like trade off. Like, no, he's awesome.
That's cool. Before I started grad school, maybe the first time, I really enjoyed games. It's really fun, but I lost the time for that as I got older. The last game I played, that's okay, I'm trying to remember. There's a lot of them. I'm trying to remember. PC, I didn't really play. I mean, I played console games in my college and stuff.
That makes it hard to date them because I can't feel like PS4 feels down.
Right. Yeah, it was a long time ago. I mean, before kids, more than 7 years ago. Before I like really got into the game. I mean, I'll look at stuff now, but I didn't really play it. Yeah. So
Hey, everybody. I've been itching to share something interesting that I found out this week, and sorry, maybe I should have done it at the beginning of class when you were asking for people to talk. I thought I'd save it until it was my time. So I met an ornithologist, bird scientist, right? And had a really interesting conversation with her and was able to ask a question that has bothered me, puzzled me for years. So when it seemed like the time was right and, you know, she was nice enough, she wasn't gonna laugh in my face for asking a dumb question. I wanted to know about the geese, flying north, flying south for the winter, for the summer. He said, one side of the V is always longer than the other. Yeah, I know the V has something to do with aerodynamics, you know, lets them fly with less effort, that kind of thing, but why is one side of the V longer than the other? She said, there's more geese on that side. Sorry. So I'm going to talk about automation, future of IO, outwards. And I can get my thing to obey. All right, that looks a little better. There we go. So, a little bit of the history of automation. This is from the SciOp paper, of which we have one of the authors in this very room, so I hope I don't miss any details. But just starting out, kind of the history of automation in work and industry. So, steam power back in the late 1700s, early 1800s, steam engines, mechanization of factories, of machinery, that sort of thing was obviously a big change for workers that had to deal with it. We moved up through the years, and now, aside from steam, now everything's green, right? So we have our own changes that we're dealing with, new power sources, energy's coming from different places, and so that's going to be a reality for us, just like that earlier change was for those people a couple hundred years ago. Likewise, again, the machinery itself in the factories became automated, and fewer people could do the same job in less time. Now you've got one operator that's in that one machine that does the work of all those people that were in the previous image. And then back in the day when you wanted a big hunk of something, you had to take it to a big hunk, and you had to hit it with a hammer for a while and made your donut or whatever that is. Nowadays, it would be made by something that looks a little bit more like this. I can leave that picture up as long as you'd like. So what type of work is going to get automated? What sorts of jobs, what sorts of workers need to be prepared for this? And so obviously the first set of attributes there, those types of work are good candidates for automation. Conversely, jobs that are less likely to be automated they're at the opposite pole on those three measures. And not a lot of surprises there, but I think it is useful to think about going forward. So we're talking about Industry 4.0, you can see here. That first industrial revolution with the steam power and everything was what they consider the first revolution. After that came electricity and the assembly line. That was around late 1800s, 1900. The third revolution was in the 1970s. We started getting computerization, programmable controls for machinery and for processes. And then now we're in the midst of that fourth revolution where we have communication revolution and interconnectedness, the internet, technology, all of that stuff that is going to impact the processes and the machinery and the people that we work with. It can be automated because a robot arm is doing it, or it can be automated like some of our other speakers today have mentioned, because a computer can aggregate data or do some process faster than people can and more accurately. So a little story. This right here is what's known as a smart meter. You guys almost certainly have one of those on your house, or if you live in an apartment or something like that, somewhere down in the basement, there's a room that has one of these for every single unit in the building, all in a big spread on the wall. And as recently as 10 or 15 years ago, somebody from the power company had to come out and look at your meter, write down the number that was on the display, and then they bring that information back to the power company. They would compare, well, not the meter reader, but somebody else would take that number, compare it to your number from the month before, do a little math, multiply by your rate, and that's how much you have to pay for the month. With the smart meters, now, instead of getting that information every month, the power company gets that information about every 15 minutes. And nobody has to come out and look at it. It's automated. It goes, these meters actually talk to each other. So the meter in your house is talking to your neighbor. About 1 in every 20 of them collects all the information from the surrounding meters and then sends it up to the company. So they have a more powerful transmitter that can reach that extra distance. But these have automated that task of the meter reader who used to come out and do that manually. We talk about automating tasks and not jobs. I put the asterisk on jobs because for meter readers, it really did automate their job. That task of reading the meter was the main feature of what they did. And when that became automated, they needed to find something else to do. So many of them were able to upskill, get additional training, and move into other positions within the company. They became meter technicians. So now they can work on the new meters if there's a problem. They go out, they speak with customers if somebody's having flickering lights, or why is my bill 3 times as high this month? Well, did you put in a refrigerator in your garage and it's August? That's probably why. So they're dealing with those sorts of issues rather than just reading meters now. But for the most part, ideally, automation is going to deal with tasks within a job. And so this is from our other reading, the really long one, the McKinsey. And what I like about this one is it breaks down different types of jobs by the tasks, shows how ready they are, how amenable they are to being automated. So the closer you are to red, the more able to be automated is the task. The bigger the circle, the more of a person's time who does that job it takes up. So some of these things, this is from food service at the top, if you can read that one. So obviously, food service has a big portion of their time that is spent doing predictable physical work, repetitive work. If you're making burgers at McDonald's, that sort of thing, that can easily be automated. As you move down the scale and get into some of the other jobs, like professionals here, they don't have quite the same kind of repetitive tasks like that, but they do still spend large amounts of their time doing things that at least some of it can be automated. And like I've got on the other side there, many of the types of tasks that people do are difficult to automate, but most jobs can be at least partly, or can only be partly automated. But that does mean most jobs can be partly automated. So regardless of what you're doing and what setting you're doing it in, there's a good chance that something you're doing could be automated in some way. Again, even if it's just a computer that helps you with data entry or something like that. So how do our workers adapt to this changing world? And how can we help them do that? One thing is, in a lot of cases, the underlying emotion that generates resistance to change is fear. Fear of losing your job, fear of being left behind, fear for your paycheck, your family, and all that kind of stuff. So as long as we recognize that, are prepared for that, and can help employees work through that with that understanding that that's the place it's coming from. Also, just to remind people that this is something that's happened before. There are a lot of jobs over the history of humankind that have changed, even disappeared because of automation. There are a lot of people that went through those changes and succeeded, and let's help our people in our organizations find ways to succeed, not to get left behind or to fall by the wayside and not be able to adapt along with the work itself. So here's the things that we can do. I'm not going to spend too much time on those because I actually think it's a more productive discussion when we talk about what we as IO practitioners can do inside of organizations. And so we have several roles that we can perform. So I've picked the people that I think are good examples of each of those kinds of roles. So the first one there, the student of automation and of change in the workplace keeps current on what's going on. And just listening to Joe's presentations, I think he does that. He wants to know what's up, and he does a good job of collecting that information and communicating it. We obviously have some instructors who do a good job of educating us on the state of things, and within the organization, that's a role that you can play too. You can be the educator for people around you in terms of what's happening in automation and how do we prepare. The scientists, again, we're IO practitioners, we're also IO scientists. Yeah, take a job or a task and see what happens when you try out an automation process on it. How well does that work? Does it save the company money, or is it a disaster? And apparently from that picture, it also helps to be angry if you're a scientist.
Oh, yeah.
The coach, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. We've talked about coaching. Be alongside people and help them through the process of leading all of that change that's going around. And then a connector. And I'm so glad that Tiana went first today because I think she really just proved my point that she was a good example of somebody who brings together different concepts and bridges the gaps between them and does a great job explaining them. And so that's all of these roles are things that one person or several people can share, and ways that you're going to prepare your employees and your organizations for automation. One note of caution: right automation at the wrong time, not good. So Southern California Edison over at the Chino Airport has their helicopter fleet, and they have automatic fire suppression systems. And one of those went off a few weeks ago. And that's what you get.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there's a helicopter under there.
Wow.
So fortunately, no actual fire, but a lot of money, a lot of time to clean that up and fix the issue. So automation has its pitfalls, but it's going to happen. It's both coming and here to stay. So I hope we're all ready for it. Yes.
I think you did a great job, and your next career is going to be professor. You're a natural, you're very comfortable. You have the natural humor. So I love it. I love that you bring in the examples that you bring in. I have a question though. Were you at Edison when they transitioned from the meter readers to the automated?
That's when I started. It was actually while they were in the process of installing smart meters, and so I joined their training department when they were training everyone in the organization about what those new meters meant and how it was going to change things.
So did they have a strategic plan in terms of shifting these workers around so they weren't displaced or weren't left jobless? Were they very cognizant of that before they made that switch over to the new technology?
I want to say yes, and I'm only uncertain to the degree that the company had prepared for because I don't know that, but I've never heard anything along the lines of, oh, all these poor meter readers, they just kicked them out the door. No, it wasn't like that. So, and in my 10 years there, just what I've seen is the HR department I think does a good job of planning for things like that and does want to give people new opportunities who are ready to try something else. So yes, I know that they did prepare for that, but not everybody could make that kind of transition. So some people did have to go elsewhere, but a lot of people did, like I said, upskill and
Yeah.
work into other roles.
Do you know if they have the same technology for water meters? Because I'm pretty sure where I live, they still have a human being come out and read our water meter.
Okay, I don't know. I really don't know anything about water or the metering there.
I was just curious.
I would assume you could do the same thing, but I am not aware of that. Yes, Jan?
I think you did an amazing job. You talked about the readings, you put in your own personal experience, you made it relevant to us as an audience, you gave us like actions that we could focus on, you gave us examples, like that was fantastic. That was really, really good. I loved everything about that presentation. You even walked like to the back. I don't think anybody's done that before, where like they walk all the way back here. So I think that was great. The only thing that I had is it might have been a little bit over the 7 minutes. I wasn't timing it. Like I was honestly really into the presentation, but by the time you got to the end, I was like, wait a minute, has he been up there for a hot minute? Like, has this been going on for a long time? But I really loved everything about the presentation though. Like I don't mind the time, but I know that other people.
No, yeah. Thanks. No, I did exactly what I thought I would do, and I started my timer and I walked away from it.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic though. I thought you did a really good job. And yeah, I agree with Brittany that like you're a natural. Like, yeah, you don't seem uncomfortable at all. You seem just like you're just like talking to people about some cool information.
Thank you. Anybody else? I know I've already overstayed my welcome.
I love it. You did a great job. Great sense of humor. I started laughing because I'd heard the joke before, so maybe it's a Midwest thing.
Could be.
But I love that joke. I think it's hilarious. So I was very glad you set it up perfectly. You did amazing in that. So that was awesome, and you had humor throughout. Could you remind us what the site you use for the graphics are?
Oh, Pixabay.
Pixabay. Pixabay. Okay.
Are you worried that that's where you found your picture?
That was LinkedIn.
I hadn't thought of that, but now I am.
XAPY.
Okay. All right, I'm putting it on our Blackboard site because those were great pictures.
And yeah, and what I love about it, and I actually found out about that a few years ago from somebody who went through IO at another school, but they're all royalty free.
Right.
So you can use them for this. I mean, education, you can typically use things a lot more freely. Anyway,
Right,
but
right.
I can use them in my work.
Awesome.
Because they don't care about the royalties, so.
That's
Yeah, great
awesome.
research.
So I thank you for that. I want to make sure that I got it in there. So now it's on our resource page. So thank you. I appreciate that. They were very, very good. And some of them were tantalizingly humorous. So that was great. I had no idea how uncomfortable I would be seeing myself up there. I wasn't the blacksmith. That was not me. I know. That's not the picture I'm talking about.
That is on Pixabay. And I would say Pixabay, in my experience, is about 99% safe for work.
Okay.
There are a few in there. If you see the tag like human body or something like that, then be cautious. But
Okay.
it's almost entirely safe now.
Okay, good. Well, I appreciated that. That was really good. I thought you did a phenomenal job. It was really good. Ken already said maybe it was a little long, but your pacing was good. You had a lot of material to deliver. Your content was strong, and it didn't drag on. Even sometimes when there is a lot of content, you broke it up really nicely to digestible pieces with personal examples, relevant stories, anecdotes, and then little quips that we could take home too. Right? That automation is typically tasks, not an entire job. Sometimes it could be the job. Entirely, if it was something like reading a meter, which I don't know what's all involved in that, but it's fairly simplistic, I'm assuming. And so when a job is very repetitive, as you mentioned with the graph as well in the McKinsey paper, there's more of it that can be automated. And so in that way, maybe the whole job does get automated. But I appreciated you contextualizing that, saying, look, they still upskilled, retrained, and were able to, give people maybe more meaningful jobs in other avenues or places within the company itself. So I thought that was really good, and things that we should keep in mind, definitely, to consider. I love Amy's presentation as well, in that we want to automate the things that we don't want to do, or that are repetitive, or that like give us carpal tunnel and stuff. We just don't want to do those laborious tasks. They're not really in our best interests. We have more capacity, right, as people, and we can do better by caring for the people and making sure that we train them and work with people properly to get them to a place where they can produce the most output, whatever that may be. So I loved it. You had an awesome presentation, great sense of humor. I agree. You're up for professor next. So I think that's your next application process.
Boy, we already got one of those in the house.
Oh, good point. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good job.
Well, hopefully who's up next will plug it into the.
Let's see. Who's next? Amar's left and Hayden is left. I think, is that right? Per se.
Yeah, to do mine, I changed the
Yeah.
HDMI.
Sure.
I couldn't remember if it was on
I
this.
think it just went to sleep.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. Yeah, you're good. Yep. Really? I've never heard of that. Okay. Cool. Soccer season comes to an end this weekend, so maybe I'll have time someday. Yeah. No, I mean my kids. Soccer, so just coaching them. Yeah. I don't watch any sports. Yeah, I'm watching them play sports. I'm coaching, yelling at the sidelines. My daughter asked, like, could you not yell so much? I mean, I'm just cheering, really. Yeah.
Okay, so hello guys, my name is Hayden, and based on this week's reflections, I'm going to be focusing my topic on automation for the future as IO professionals. So first off, I want to start by defining automation, and automation is defined as the process by which a task or procedure is performed with the decrease of human assistance by the side article. And also, it would change the work for employees with varied types of jobs, from CEOs to cashiers and actually fashion designers as well. Because automation will affect parts of jobs instead of the profession in its entirety. So if you've ever used like the Starbucks app to order your coffee and then go pick it up, and even order your food and when it's like the picture up there from McDonald's, then you've used a form of automation. And actually, another form of automation would be self-driving, just like the famous vehicle Tesla. And as much as we would like to think that it's reliable, it's actually not that reliable. And I was actually able to find that between June 2016 and May 2021, the NHTSA investigated 36 crashes that involved Tesla or other vehicles that were had self-driving features. And also it's marketed as self-driving, but still requires human operation, so it's not entirely self-driving because you still need to have your hands on the wheel. So what does this mean for us? So mask automation will likely change the nature of jobs, like I said earlier, and it won't eliminate the workforce. And instead of looking at which jobs can be automated, organizations want to focus on which tasks can be automated instead. So taking away the more tedious tasks can increase efficiency and time allotted for other tasks and shift focus to a more critical business priority. So examples of those tasks, as Mark actually covered in his presentation, are repetitive versus variable. And an example of repetitive would be tasks that are not changing and do not change over time and are predictable. And variable tasks would be unpredictable and require adaptive criteria for decision making. So moving on, independent versus interactive. Independent would be those tasks that are carried out with team settings, and interactive tasks would require teamwork or effort. And lastly, we have physical versus mental. So physical obviously would be manual tasks, and mental tasks require cognitive skills, which would fall under IO psychologist. So application of automation, as the SIOP article covered, with a good example of that would be the IBM Watson recruitment, and it allows HR leaders to move more comfortably to artificial intelligence assistance through hiring processes to eliminate biases that have to do with age, race, gender, education, and his previous employer. So complications of automation that I was able to find on an article for IO psychologists would be the lack of emotional empathy. And that's going to be defined as the ability to recognize and understand other people's feelings by taking the perspective of another. And also future workplace requirements are calling out the importance of social intelligence, decision making and judgment. And also it argues that curiosity is also important because it's a construct to consider when future workers must only learn new information and synthesize it into solving a problem on the fly. So, how do we prepare as IO psychologists? So the article actually said that we should focus on a more future-facing orientation in its anticipation to respond to these changes, and by adopting a future-facing orientation, we are proactively identifying upcoming trends, predicting their impact and guiding their influence on the guidance of IO psychology. And also with proactive application of using IO psychology, its expertise as scientific backing and organizational leaders. Organizational leaders can become an even more central part of reshaping the workforce of the future. And lastly, creative ways of upskilling and educating the workforce will be a key to both individual and organizational success. These are the references I was able to use for my presentation. And thank you so much.
So I love how informative your presentation is. I really enjoyed when you brought that example of the Starbucks ad because I feel like that was really relatable. And you talked about the technology examples you provided on the board. So with that being said, when you had discussed about that, I saw that your face, your excitement kind of went up because you were very engaging with the audience. So that being said, I would have really appreciated that if instead of sort of reading directly off of your presentation, if you included more so that, more so engagement.
Yeah.
Instead of like reading directly off of it. But other than that, I really enjoyed just the information. Thank you.
Since obviously our presentations overlapped a little bit, I appreciated the way that you organized it. I kind of struggled with what order to put things in and just how to deliver some of that. So having come out on one side of it, I enjoyed seeing how you dealt with that. It was easy to follow, maybe because I was familiar with it already, but
Yeah.
it was good.
My favorite part is I think you look fabulous. So I love your shoes. I love your blazer. You look very professional. I kind of piggybacking off what she was saying. You relied, I feel like, completely on between your note card. You're either reading your note card or you're reading the slides. You had very little time where you weren't reading something, and so I'm sure that you're confident and you have all the knowledge. You don't necessarily need to rely on that. So maybe just practicing more, because the more you read off of that, it gives the appearance that you don't know what you're talking about. So maybe, I don't know if you practice or not, but the content is good. I just think the more you're reading directly off, it just kind of detracts from what you're trying to share with us. So like she mentioned, it's kind of increasing the engagement by giving us more eye contact. Thank you.
I think along with eye contact would be just a little bit more emotion in your voice as well, because it was kind of like one tone. So, show us that you're equally excited about what you're sharing with us so that we can match your excitement to whatever, you're discussing.
Yeah, you have a good eye for design. I like it. It's simple, but really clean and nice. I liked the material that was on the screen. It was discreet. This is all that you need to know. You did read it, so try not to, if you are a rather quiet person or relatively quiet, when you turn towards the screen and read, then it makes it very hard to hear, especially like as people are further back or maybe even behind you at that point, depending on kind of where you're standing and they're sitting. Depending on the presentation or the type of presentation that you give, sometimes you'll be at a podium and having like note cards. This is a little bit more informal, right? So you have the freedom to walk around, which you did, and I appreciate that. You did move up from the safety of the podium, which is kind of crazy to think about. At the beginning of the semester, like everyone was there, and now no one is, right? Does everyone like recognize that? I think that's amazing. It's something we should appreciate about everyone that's presenting. So that's great. I think that's great progress in that regard. I'm sorry that this screen wasn't working, so you couldn't like use that to assist in any way. I don't know how to get that thing working, but I would try and, like Brittany said, rely less on the note cards. You have them, right? So maybe rehearsal instead of practice, right? Where you have an audience, maybe a significant other or a pet or a goldfish or a butterfly, whatever you need to just get yourself to have an audience, to be in this space or even this classroom or in the class next door with a couple classmates. Give the presentation a few times over so that you have the information fresh in your head of what you want to say and to be able to deliver it. Now, some of the information here is a little bit, I don't want to say dense, it's just from the readings itself, which is great. It's very informative. those are relatively difficult things to recite off memory because they're not your words, right? They're specific words from someone else. What's much easier are the great example you gave about Tesla, about Starbucks, and I think you could have even elaborated on that and asked engaging questions of your audience. Like Lorena said, that's so relatable, right? Like you've put your order in, they got it wrong, or how many people have lived this experience before? You know, the idea popped in my head because it's just something we don't think about anymore. But originally, elevators had a person in them to adjust the levers to make the elevator move, right? That was the original format of the elevator. And then that position got automated, and now we do it ourselves. Push a button, and we don't think twice about it. But that used to be someone's full-time job. So how is our world different, for better or for worse, and in what ways? And I think we could ask people here, like, what can you think of that's been automated in your life? What has it been a general benefit, or do you think there are any consequences to that? You don't have to answer. That's one of the best parts about giving a presentation and asking difficult questions. There's not an easy answer, but you can ask that to get us thinking and to take some of the responsibility off of you to memorize a 5-7 minute speech, right? To make it a little more natural, to just more of a conversation. Like, hey, we're in this together. I want to present some challenging ideas to you to make you think about this idea a little bit more and expand your current understanding of the context or parameters in which this operates. So I think that would really benefit, someone like yourself, where you want to deliver, you have a lot of great content, but try and have those examples where you don't have to memorize so much for it. And then you could just talk freely, like you did for the example with the Tesla cars and Starbucks orders. I thought that part was really good. And I think it's really relatable and fun to engage that way. So thank you for your presentation. Good job.
Hello, my name is Cindy. I'll be presenting about the future of I/O. And so imagine you could have a time machine and you can travel 2 times. You can go back to the past, stay in the present, and go to the future. For
do you think is the first thing that you will notice? Or you can say that it's the buildings or the number of cars or what people are wearing or doing. And all of this change had to do with technology. When I was little, I remember reading books about flying cars. In the future, and guess what? We have flying cars. So a few weeks ago, Japan just granted a safety certificate to a flying car for the first time. They are aiming to launch a flying taxi service by 2025. But comparing to the past, when the only transportation method is through walking or being carried, we have been using technology to make our life easier, and it's not gonna be too long until technology is gonna take over some of the tasks in our job. We call this automation. Automation is when we use technology to do some tasks automatically. And some real life examples are like the robot hotel in Japan, where they use robot in the front desk. And we have Amazon Go, where people can walk in and walk out easily without having to line up and pay. We also have this kind of shop in China. So if future mean more technology, so what will be changed? What's gonna be more? There will be an increase in productivity, there will be more human and machine interactions, and we might even be required to have new set of skills like troubleshooting technical problems. And what will be less of? There will be less routine, repetitive work, less physical work, and less independent works. So what does it have to do with us? So as mentioned in the previous slide, that there will be more automation. This means that there will be a change in nature of work, and this could increase in fear, or some employee might not catch up with the change. What we can do is we can educate the workforce. And we can share visions. By telling employees that, oh, there's gonna be a change, it's not enough. We also have to tell them why it's necessary for change. By sharing vision, we can help them visualize change. And secondly, it's the communicate frequently. By communicating with them, they can be more aware of the change and are more likely to accept the change. Feedback. By having feedback, we can address the concern of employee and help them reduce their fear and anxiety. And the best way to prepare workers for change is to equip them with the skills that they need, so they will be prepared when change happens. There are also many other type of techniques that we can use, but these are the 4 most common ways. Thank you.
I love that you brought up flying cars because I've been telling my husband for 20 years, we're tired of them. When are we getting flying cars? Because I remember that from the Jetsons and I hate traffic. I'm like, what are we waiting for? But I loved you bringing in that, and I liked how you focused on what I think is important when we talk about automation is preparing for change management and how that's going to affect people. So I like that you touched on that. I think your volume has increased a little bit from prior presentations, so I appreciate that. And I think overall you did a great job on that.
Thank you. I think you did such a good job. Your slides were so well, just like the way they were transitioning, like everything was like very pretty. I would say like when you were asking your questions in the beginning, just like pause for like suspense and then like answer them just to kind of like pace it out. But other than that, I think you did a really good job.
Hey, Cindy. The only feedback I had, awesome, amazing. I loved all the examples. I wanted to just hear more about that third, I think it was the cafe, like how that all involved automation, because you touched on the Amazon one, but I wasn't sure how the cafe one was.
It was actually the same as the Amazon Go.
Oh,
People
okay.
just grab stuff
Go
and
in and out, feel like we got it.
I'm just curious, the cafe, so what was special about that?
So actually, from Amazon Go, right? When you walk in, you have to scan the code from your phone. But with the one in China, they do like a face scan, so you don't have to do anything.
And then you order like, and then you just order your coffee.
Yeah, you just go and grab. Yes, sir.
Yeah. This was really good. I enjoyed it. I always like your presentations quite a bit. I thought you did a phenomenal job of the presentation content. The material was really good. You had excellent examples. I would agree with just pausing. You moved quickly through them, and it's nice to give us more time to kind of process the things you're talking about. I know for anyone presenting on the material or the examples that are clear to you, that are familiar to you, we tend to go over them fairly quickly because we already know it. But it's possible that your audience isn't as familiar with the example, so you'll have to spell it out a little bit more than what you may think you need to do in your circumstance. Just explain it in just like one more sentence for each example that you had, and then pause for half a second, right, longer after you ask a question. But it's a very small thing that I would think could actually benefit quite a bit. Because like that with the third example, I got it that it was just like the Amazon store, but it was even better, right? It has just a facial scan, and I don't have to scan a card. I fill up my shopping cart and just walk back to my car. That sounds amazing. I love that idea. Interacting with people is my least favorite thing. I'm just kidding. I like it. So I think that would be just one thing that I would choose. The other thing where you went to the slide, can you go back a couple slides to just one slide actually? This previous slide. Yeah, perfect. So something that garners a lot of authority. Audiences really love this idea of enumerating points. And you could even say, instead of things that we could do, you could say the 4 fundamentals of change management. Because you have 4. And it really sounds like an authoritative, like, oh, wow, that's really like powerful thing. You know the 4? Please tell me, what are the 4? And you did. Okay, 1, shared vision. This is what shared vision accomplishes. Maybe even what shared vision means, or how do you do it, right? What's one example of like how a leader, how an IO person could actually do that in an organization? 2, communicate frequently. Make sure, and then you talked about what that accomplishes. 3, and then we now know like the structure and all 4 of these of what to expect. You did say the number, but to give it that type of umbrella, like there are 4 of them, and I'm going to talk about these 4, and that's the package that I have. It's this nice gift that you get to keep with you, and now you know the 4 principles of change management. Something like that gives it a lot of authority that people tend to like. So I would try that next time, because you have another presentation, I'm sure. No? This is your last? Oh, I'm so sad. I like your presentations a lot. This was awesome. Great example. So just keep that in mind for future presentations in other classes that you have to try and incorporate some of those feedbacks. So very good. Thank you.
Ready? I'll tell you later.
I probably won't be able to tell you as well as she can, but to the best of my understanding, it's more like a convenience store that they automate that type of process, but it's not like ordering food or ready-made dishes or anything like that, but it's like a corner store or 7-Eleven or something more like that where everything's packaged. You just buy it. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's more like this too.
like my brain would be like, just like in most of the Asian schools, they have food ready, so all you have to do is just like. So that's kind of like really, yeah, because I think 7-Eleven kind of have that microwave, well, not here in the US, but it was like the 7-Eleven here almost had frozen food, but then in that kind, it's like freshly made food. That's cool.
Every day.
Yeah.
Korea has that, but they don't automate it. You have to like go to the person to buy it, microwave it. But I love that.
I've only experienced the Amazon Go and I felt so uncomfortable because I really did feel like it was stealing. And I would like look up the items because I was like, I don't know how this works. There is video how like someone they were testing if they can detect it.
Yeah.
So they would like try to grab something and another one put in their sleeve and
Oh.
see if the machine would detect it. But yeah, they did.
Really? Wow. That's fun.
The 7-Elevens were. I was
Yeah.
So I see videos of that was weird.
And I like people, but there are times when I don't want to interact with that. I don't want to have to like go up, tell my stuff. I just want to steal it. That's really what I want.
I mean, they have that here too.
I didn't enjoy the pizza.
Right. Running from the police, I mean, this is stressful.
All right. Hi, my name is Amar Ansari. This is my presentation on automation. So 80%, that's the percentage of the US workforce that is concerned about unemployment due to technological advances. 37% report being afraid or very afraid of the possibility of unemployment due to automation. 5%, just 5% of jobs can be fully automated. So you can see there's a discrepancy with the fears of automation and the realities of what can actually potentially happen to jobs in terms of unemployment and displacement. So for a lot of jobs, robots simply cannot replace humans. There's some things that robots can't do that humans can. Social, emotional skills cannot be replicated by robots. Coaching, providing expertise, a lot of things that IO psychologists do cannot be replicated by robots. If you notice in the New York Times reading that we went over, IO psychologists were one of the green jobs, as in they're not likely to be automated. So that's some good news. So here's a meme that I found that kind of touches on this. So some of the consequences of automation, positive and negative, mundane, repetitive tasks that we do can be eliminated, and you'll have more time to focus on the tasks that you want to do that require critical thinking skills, problem solving. Automation will actually create a lot of jobs. When there's so much technology doing a lot of things, there need to be people checking on that technology to make sure it's not doing crazy stuff. For example, the Tesla self-driving cars, people need to have checks and balances for that. So a lot of jobs will actually be created. And that's kind of a trend we notice with more technology. There's a lot of jobs that are always created. And as we noticed in the McKinsey Global Institute article, automation will result in greater productivity as well as greater net global economic output. So a lot of positives. There are some cons. For example, certain jobs are likely to be highly automated and potentially displaced, especially jobs in the food service, warehousing and transportation, and manufacturing sectors, highly likely to be highly automated and potentially displaced. So what can workers in these sectors do? Future-proofing for automation. So the McKinsey article talked about how jobs that relate to tech and automation will be in high demand. 69% of programmers and developers have some or all of their training, self-training, they're self-taught. Less than half, 42% of developers have a college degree related to computer science. So the New York Times article is talking about how retraining sometimes requires a college degree, but programming, developing, automation jobs would be a viable option that would not require that degree. This graph shows how, as opposed to all other STEM fields, computing jobs as compared to graduates, there's over 3 times as many job openings as there will be graduates through 2022. So there's a huge need for workers in the tech field. So I wanted to show an example of automation. So my current position, I am a research and data science intern at a nonprofit called Jazz Hands for Autism. So essentially, I work with the data, I analyze trends, and I make scripts to kind of manage the data. But one thing that I have to do, kind of relating to what Amy was talking about, is I have to make reports of all the students' progress and send them out to insurance companies for every single student. So I have to get data from every single lesson. Kids will have lessons multiple times a day, multiple times a week. And I have like 20 kids in my case. So this is a very time-consuming task that I have to do every month. So for this presentation, I wanted to make a script that could automate that so that I would never have to do that again. So that's what I did here. And I just wanted to show you guys how it could work. So I use a program called R. And it's a programming language for statistical processing. And I can show you how it can help and eliminate a lot of these mundane repetitive activities. So this is the script. I called it the automation function. And first I'll show you what I kind of work with here. So this is an example of some of the data that I would be seeing. Oh, there's no S up here. Okay, so this is just kind of a simplified version with just 3 rows. So it has the student names and it has their meal goals and their career goals. So I have a lot more students and a lot more factors, but this is just a simplified version to show you what the script can do. So if you look at the script, it's a while function, or it's a while loop with a bunch of if and else conditionals. So right here it says while x is less than or equal to 3, because there's only 3 rows. So if it was a larger data set, I would change that. For example, if it was 120 rows, that would be 120. And then for the automation function, I just put where I want it to start. So since I want to start at row 1, I would put 1. For example, if for November it started at row 60, I would put row 60 here. And then the next month, if it started at row 90, I would put 90, and I would change the while function up here to 150 or wherever it went. And what it does is it runs through all these functions and it checks every single row, and it says, is it this name? Is it Ruben? If it is, print out all this stuff for Ruben. If not, check, is it Cassie? If not, check if it's Ben. And then if it's not, just don't print anything, because then it's nobody on my caseload. And then no matter what, X gets +1, so it just moves to the next row. So I can show you what it'll do here. And it just prints out this paragraph. So literally, if I put this in for my job, I would never have to do this mundane, repetitive task ever again. So I just wanted to give an example of how helpful automation can be. And hopefully this illustrated that. But that's all that I had for you guys. These are my references. Thank you for your time. Yes.
Do you have a degree in computer science or
No, my degree's in psychology, but I'm actually taking a course. Dr. Richard Landers at the University of Minnesota has a course called Data Science for Social Scientists, and he goes over how to use R. It's really great. It goes like from not using R at all to like machine learning, artificial intelligence. Super great course. It's free online if anyone wants to check it out.
Can you go back to the slide where you we're talking about like the gaps between jobs and I think graduate
Yeah, this one.
education? So I really appreciate that you brought this in terms of when you're putting the first talking about computing, I'm assuming you're referencing like computer science graduates.
Yes.
So just so you know, that's the most impacted college major, both for freshman and transfer level. It's absurd. You've got within California in our UCs and Cal States every year just for transfer students alone, you've got 2,000 students applying for like, depending on the school, 50 to 100 spots. So there is this huge gap, but also it goes back to your question earlier about what is our education system going to do? So what are your thoughts on knowing that there is a huge gap between what the workforce needs, what our colleges are producing? Do you think that we need more college degrees, or can we go a different route to fill some of these gaps?
So I think that it's impressive that despite the fact that it's so impacted and so many people are trying to get this degree, there's literally so many jobs that there's still this gap. So there's definitely a need. But I also feel like there's, like, as I was talking about, half of developers don't have a computer science degree. It's something that can be very self-taught. One of the things about computer science is there's kind of like a pride in the fact that it's very open source and they try to make the information available to everybody. So if somebody's motivated enough, they can learn all that stuff by themselves. You don't necessarily need a computer science degree, especially if you're going into something like web development. So I would recommend that if somebody is not able to get a computer science degree for whatever reason, because the major is too full, to just start creating websites by themselves, learn some of that stuff, create a portfolio, and you can get a job off of that, honestly. Because there is that insane need for people in the field.
I love your presentation overall and everything you brought into it. The only suggestion I would say is I like how you gave your personal example of where you're working and the coding you did to help streamline your job personally. But I think depending on your audience, you maybe got like a little much too into the weeds there when you were explaining all that. If we're not knowledgeable of that, or if we're not in an actual classroom, you're training that, I don't think you had to go in that much detail, but I did appreciate you showing us how you created that and it helps your work and it really didn't take much time to figure it out. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. You're totally right. I was showing my girlfriend yesterday and she was kind of just like, I feel like she had the same vibe, but yes, to be honest.
So, okay, I have like so many points to touch on. First off, kudos to you for being able to use R and you only had like one error show up. Like, that's amazing. Every time I've ever used R, it's like error. So like that line of code, I was right along with you, but I have experience with R. So I thought that was great that you kind of used your own experience and you're like, you know what? I'm not only gonna like show other people how automation can be done, but I'm gonna take this opportunity to kind of learn myself and do something for myself too. I do kind of agree with Brittany that like, yeah, it probably was a little bit like, what is going on here for a lot of the people, but it's okay. Like, it's all good. It was something that was really cool to you. As far as the like education part that we were talking about, I totally agree with you that a lot of people in like the computer science field are self-educated. My own husband actually didn't get a bachelor's degree. He just got like his A+, his CompTIA. I don't know if those are the same thing. I'm just throwing things out that he talks about all the time. But yeah, like I'm kind of curious to see how this will impact education, because just in my husband's experience and with other people that we know that did take that kind of not necessarily self-educated route, but didn't do the traditional bachelor's degree route, it took my husband 6 months of every single day trying to get a job. He couldn't even get hired at Geek Squad because he didn't have a bachelor's degree. It was absolutely insane. Luckily, you know, he got his foot in the door, and like after he got his foot in the door, he was fine. But it's amazing to see that graph that you put up where the demand is so high and there's so few bachelor's degrees for that kind of major, but that people are still being so incredibly picky on those entry level jobs. That, you know, like I know my husband with 5 different Microsoft certifications that took him years to get, and everybody was like, nope, not good enough. You don't have a bachelor's degree? We don't want it. So I would be kind of curious to see like how many bachelor's degrees are being awarded in that, but also how many other like certificates and self-taught people are like that as well. I'm sorry, I totally went on a tangent, so I was really interested in what you were talking about. But I love your presentation. I thought it was really great. I love the practicality of it, like, you know, like what I was talking about before, like you creating something for yourself. Yeah, and the only feedback that I have would be, yeah, maybe the R was a little bit above some people in the class, but I appreciated it. That makes me feel better.
Cool, that makes me feel great. I appreciate that. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's a problem with a lot of fields, honestly. There's that whole, you need experience for this job, but, you know, you can't get experience because you can't get a job, that whole, you know, catch-22. But, yeah, I totally agree with you, and thank you. Yes, Mark.
I liked the R. I liked the coding demo.
That's right.
I don't know that language. I know just a very little bit of coding, JavaScript and things like that, but I was impressed by how you debugged it on the fly up there. A lot of people wouldn't have caught the error where it was, so I thought that was really cool. And I think something like that helps just to show people how accessible those things can be. If they have a little bit of mathematical knowledge, a little bit of programming exposure before, to look at that and to see what you did and how you were using it. You know, that people might think, hey, maybe I could learn how to do that and open up some new doors. So yeah, I appreciate you showing that.
Cool, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. That's what I was kind of hoping people would glean from that, so I really appreciate that. Anybody else? More?
Yeah, it was great. I have a love-hate relationship with R as well. So it's Tiana. So I know it can be challenging with just one incorrect letter placement, but like Mark said, you caught it on the fly, which is really impressive during a presentation. No, it's not easy. So that was really good. I like the idea, and I think to really like open Pandora's box in this way, to like change the thought process and the accessibility of tech and computer software and trying to automate things. There are more accessible things than R, and you're probably well aware of several, that could automate a lot of the features in our lives that could have been used as examples. I like this example because it was very personally relevant, which is, you know, really nice because we get to know you and also connect with you on that. So that was really well placed in the presentation. I think this lends itself to the notion that we can we don't have to learn a new software programming language or anything, but just to be cognizant of that things can be automated in our day-to-day, right? In our work life, and we should be looking for those opportunities, because they're opportunities for us to say, we can automate this thing. At least we should think about what automating this might look like. And I think that perspective is really appreciated. I really liked at least kind of where you were using this example of automation in your own life to say, hey, change your perspective on this. And I love how you started. Like, you helped us change our perspective from the very beginning. Okay, everyone, not everyone, 80%, terrified about, you know, losing some part of their job or all their job from this massive, scary monster of automation, when in truth, maybe 5%, right, of the workforce may be impacted by automation in its entirety of overtaking their job. So perhaps it's an overreaction to this idea that actually has a lot of pros. You had 3 pros and only 1 con, right? So It's very heavily favored on the pro side from your presentation. And then a great example that really drove it home of like, look for these opportunities. So I like how you structurally like mapped it out to help us go from identifying like, yes, this is a fearful notion for a lot of people in different areas of their work life, but it doesn't have to be. So I thank you for that like, journey that you took us on. I think you did a very good job with that. So I just wanted to make that kind of cognitive, like aware and salient, right? That was the journey. So that would be maybe some feedback to just at the end, let us know the journey we just took.
Okay.
Just to remind us, a lot of people are scared about this. We don't have to be so afraid. There are lots of benefits. This is one of them. Thank you for your time.
Okay, sounds good. I had originally titled it "Don't Fear," and then the Reaper Strike Through Automation. You know, so that was kind of my original.
It's cool. It's very good. Thank you, Mark. Very good presentation. Appreciate it. Do we have any other surprise presentations? Any other announcements? Yes? Yes? Oh, good. Not surprise presentation. You're on the sign up? Oh, yeah, you're here. Great.
You ready, Dr.
Mhm.
Dr. Fuller?
Yes.
Alright, hi you guys, my name is Carlia. Today I'll be talking about cross culture and the future that I have with IO and BO, not body odor, but behavioral or organizational. Isn't it organizational behaviors?
Yeah, but I like the video. That's funny.
Well, I have a quick statistic. So out of the 9,419 papers published on the Journal of Applied Psychology between the years of 1914 and 2014, only 1% of those papers are focused on culture. If we include the non-Western samples, only 1.6% were focused on culture. And here is another, like a visual of what studies have on culture. And there seems to be a decline to present, and this article was written in 2017. So continuing on, I'm going to discuss certain things maybe possibly in the future that we may see studies on, or what we can do to help increase papers on culture and why. The first one is to have mindful questions that are vital to individuals and societal development. For example, we can have papers not only that are important as us individualistically, such as job satisfaction, but societal development, as in certain countries, they're not so much worried about job satisfaction, but they're also worried about, hey, maybe some employment stability. Will I have a job next week? Or should I even worry about having a job next week? And then following with that, attention to levels of analysis. There are different levels when it comes to culture. So the individual level can be something personal, how you personally go about your own culture, and unit level, which is sort of how you individually within your own culture, how you go against and with it. Because you can go and put people into groups, and sometimes in those groups, not everyone of a certain group behaves the same way, because we all get categorized, but we're not exactly put into the box. We're all different. And then dispersion is just globally, we're all just different. And to see how they intertwine within all of them. Following next is dynamic perspective become typical. When and how culture matters. So the dynamic between
the aspect of cultures and how some cultures are consistent and others fluctuate. Not all culture doesn't always stay the same. It always changes, having studies on that. And then culture and global work, realizing that when we do studies, we want them to be not just identifiable within like Western countries, but also non-Western countries. And so when we look into studies, it's universal. More consideration towards construct across cultures. So again, just realizing that the constructs, the research needs to be extended a bit more. And methodological and disciplinary diversity should be a priority. So cultural values should complement field and qualitative data. And computer science up. So this one is realizing that a lot of disciplines can be mixed within each other. And when you can mix cultures within each other, you can there needs to be more studies on this as well. And so seeking that for future studies. My take on this is to make sure that many of these studies, it's not a decrease on purpose. Much of this is unintentional. We seem to focus on studies on job satisfaction and maybe employment engagement. So that is pretty much it. Thank you.
I always enjoy how you incorporate culture and like different perspectives in your presentations. I think it's really rewarding to like look at I guess just different ways of that our field impacts different demographics.
I apologize because this isn't directly about the material presented, but I'm wondering if in your research, did you find anything about offshoring tasks and whether it makes more sense for workers or for a business to disperse tasks to overseas locations, or is it better overall for workers from elsewhere to come here and do those jobs?
The research that I did was more trying to get more studies on cross culture, but I did run into how like since work is becoming more remote, that we're having more global jobs. Like a lot of companies are like between different countries and cultures, they're intertwining. So it's very important to have these studies.
Sure.
So it's not answering your question.
Yeah,
but
no,
that's what
it was,
too.
yeah, I didn't expect that you would have a definite answer, but just wondered if it would come up. Thanks.
Yes.
It's hard for me to believe that there's only 1% of studies focused on culture. What journal was that for? Because that was 100 years, right?
It was the Journal of Applied Psychology in 2000. I ran into it in the CV library.
Culture might be more studied in like social psychology.
Yeah, this was like trying to get cross culture with RAO and organizational behavior. Yeah.
When you were doing your research, like when I was at Cal State, we tried to do a research study on like organizational culture and how that had to do with perceptions of toxic leadership. And it was so incredibly difficult to define culture. When you were doing your readings, was there something that was there like a definition that popped out to you that was like, oh wow, okay, that really explains? Because I think we all have like an idea of what culture is, but putting it into like an objective terminology is a little bit difficult.
Yeah, I didn't come up with the definition, but it did talk a lot about how culture just isn't stable, and so that also is what makes it difficult to track it down and research on.
Yeah.
read that in the, in his little bio in the article. You were very smart to talk about.
I don't think I've ever seen him get shy before.
I'm waiting for his words of wisdom because I saw his bio. I'm like, oh, he's interested. I was also surprised to learn that you're a social psychologist and not an IO psychologist.
So my degree is in social psych, and the lab I was in the culture and cognition lab. So we spent the predominant amount of our time studying culture, kind of how they relate around the world. Okay. So this particular journal article, and not just the article, the journal itself, the Journal of Applied Psychology, is a very business-focused IO journal. It's not about culture. So I'm not entirely surprised that that's what their focus is on, because they're not interested. That's not the avenue you take. And when you're looking at culture or something as mercurial as culture, you need to seek avenues that seek to promote that agenda. So the JAP wouldn't be the place for cultural researchers to go. And I know there's critique of like academics and their research in the silos with which they live in, and that's reasonable, right? Things don't always translate very well, but there's a journal for culture, right? There's a journal of cross-cultural psychology. There are journals. There's journal, you could type in international and put in any words, and you're going to find a lot of cultural research, like, I don't know, the Journal of International Studies in Culture or Journal of International IO. Then you're going to have a lot more in that domain. Now, I will say, like, the JAP is one of the top IO journals out there, and it would be great if they did highlight on more occasions issues and articles relating to culture, right? Because if you're in the upper echelons of any type of industry, like in IO, there's a top 3, top 5, whatever, journals that people are shooting for in the research institute are ones. And I would say by and large, culture is not a major feature in IO in terms of research, and that's what's being published in the manuscripts. So I would say that's why it's not there. Not that it's an excuse, but that's the rationale, like where it would be a journal for culture in IO. Yeah, this was interesting. I think you bring up a lot of like points of like we should do this, right? We should incorporate these things, and I like that. But I think it would be interesting to see like as more of it's more of like an exemplar of like what benefit would that contribute, right? Like how would that impact the field and in what way? More than just a moral demand of like, hey, we should do these things because they're morally beneficial. You're not going to move the needle very much. But people don't do things out of moral obligation in terms of research, right? There's a bottom line. There's funding that has to be received there to be able to allocate your time and resources for that. So what is the bottom line, right, for identifying cultural components of productivity and work, right? How does that manifest? Like, where does that come from in the studies that we do know of that look at culture? For the 1% of studies that did look at culture, what did they say? Like, what did they articulate, right, in JAP or in the many other places that you might find them? So I think that would have been really impactful in your presentation. Say, look, culture could contribute these things if we gave it the time, right? If we put the resources in, this is the expected benefit of utilizing the understandings we have from cultural research, and we could understand more and benefit more if we allocated more resources in that domain. So I think that would be great. These were great questions, I think, to ask. It would just be more of like a little bit more meat to it, right? If we had a little bit more of the examples or benefits from the cultural research that's out there. Good. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate your time. Good job.